BYD Update, episode number 2, now officially a series. In the first episode, I went deep into their business and operations, light on product. In this episode, I'm going to switch that around. But first, an update on September sales as BYD drives towards 4 million vehicles sold this year. A look at BYD's sales for passenger vehicles. These include exports to other markets, but currently 90% of their sales are in China, where sales of new energy vehicles, battery EVs and plug-in hybrid EVs, take off late in the year as incentives get added to end the year strong. Those sales lead to kind of a hangover in January, plus celebrations for the Lunar New Year make for a predictable drop in sales. It's going to be close if they can hit 4 million NEV sales for the year. To date, they've sold 2.7 million. They'll need to do a little bit better than the September rate if they want to hit that 4 million mark for the year. I still think they can do it. I've seen projections for 5 million vehicles sold in 2025, and JP Morgan has a target of 6 million of sales in 2026. Unstoppable. Looking at the mix of battery and plug-in hybrids, late last year, battery electrics took off. This year, it's PHEVs that are selling like crazy. There were some improvements made to their PHEVs and some new premium models introduced, but it's also a trend we're seeing elsewhere. Battery EV sales are growing, but not as fast as PHEVs. Year to date, PHEVs account for 57% of their passenger vehicle sales, but that mix has shifted to more like 60% in recent months. Q3 earnings will be released at the end of October. I waited to publish this until the European Union voted on the Chinese BEV tariffs. It received the necessary support, but that does not mean the story's over. BYD gets 17% added to the previous 10% tariff. Some other Chinese manufacturers got hit harder than that. China is very likely to retaliate against luxury vehicles mostly made in Germany. Countries like France, not concerned about that. But the pending trade war is likely to escalate to include cheese and other products. There's a very good chance that a deal eventually gets reached, both sides supporting continued discussions. BYD may raise prices of its battery electrics in Europe. It's worth noting that plug-in hybrids are not impacted. BYD is looking to open a Pakistan plant in 2026. Details are vague right now. That news came out of an event to celebrate the start of BYD sales in that country. Naturally, there are geopolitics at play. China and India, the number 2 and number 1 most populated countries in the world, they're at odds. India is a growing market for EVs. BYD does already sell there, but imported cars pay a hefty tax. A BYD plant in Pakistan will not help trade with India because, India and Pakistan, they have even more disputes between them. So I wouldn't expect a huge plant in Pakistan. Still no word on a Mexico plant for BYD. Expect that after the US elections, regardless of who wins. BYD is smart. They don't want to poke the bear and become a political talking point any more than they already are. For example, I mentioned in the last episode their partnership with Uber. Uber announcement listed all the markets where they plan to make EVs available for ride-hailing use, and Canada was included. BYD did not want to poke the moose, I guess, and they forgot to list Canada in their version of the same press release. Didn't matter though, Canada still hit them with that hefty tariff. Even with their expanding manufacturing footprint, BYD needs to export cars from China to other markets. The China new vehicle market is just way too crowded, and it has a limit. To help with this, BYD set sail with a 7,000 vehicle carrier earlier this year called Explorer. That vessel they lease, but a new ship called Hefei is about to launch, and it will be one of a series of ships that BYD owns. To their credit, these ships are dual-fueled. Ocean-going vessels need to clean up their act, just like transportation, to address climate change and other environmental concerns. It still uses fuel oil, but it will be supplemented by liquefied natural gas, which burns cleaner. It's a first step towards cleaning up shipping. Let's start the product updates talking about Denza. It started as a joint venture between BYD and Mercedes-Benz. More recently, Mercedes took down its ownership stake to 10%. Now they gone. Denza is 100% BYD. There are various takes on why Mercedes-Benz wanted out. It was never a big sales success, so it could be seen as a distraction for Mercedes. For BYD, now under their control, they hope to breathe some life into the brand. They plan to do that with cars like the Denza Z9GT. What does it remind you of? Right, Porsche Taycan, specifically the Cross Turismo. If you're not a fan of shooting brakes, a sedan version, the Z9, is coming soon. Like the Porsche Taycan, the Denza Z9GT is a premium battery electric vehicle, but it can also be had as a plug-in hybrid, unlike Porsche. All versions have their E3 powertrain system. That's a tri-motor, two in the rear, one in the front. As an electric, it delivers 952 horsepower, far more than the entry Porsche Taycan in China, and for one-third the price. Damn. Now, Porsche gets imported into China, so it gets heavily taxed, and with Europe negotiating tariffs on EVs, German automakers know that China will hit them back and make it even more difficult for them to compete in China. If you can afford a Porsche Turbo S, it has a launch mode and overboost to get to 0 to 62 acceleration down to 2.9 seconds, half a second faster than the Denza. Range for the two are nearly identical, but those figures are on the China CLTC test, which is very generous. For example, the Porsche Taycan 4 Cross Turismo with a range of 397 miles CLTC is only rated at 277 miles on the EPA test. Same car, different tests. When the Z9 sedan arrives, expect a few more miles of range due to its more aerodynamic shape. But I'm a sucker for that shooting brake hot hatch look. The Denza Z9GT has rear-wheel steering, and to make it even more maneuverable, it can do a compass turn. We've seen other premium BYDs perform tank turns with quad motors spinning the wheels in opposite directions. As a tri-motor, the Denza can't do that, but it can lock the front wheels and have the two rear motors spin in opposite directions. A feature like this is symbolic of the Chinese EV industry. It's much younger, willing to take risks. Someone at BYD said, fuck it, why not? It will stress the drivetrain and it will certainly wear down the tires, but it's cool as hell. According to this display, it can also perform a crab walk where the rear wheels turn in the same direction as the front wheels at low speeds. As for the plug-in hybrid model, there's a little bit of mystery surrounding it. There are two basic types of PHEVs, a traditional PHEV, also called a parallel layout, where the engine drives the wheels with electric assist. BYD-branded DMI vehicles are typically like this. Or it can be a range-extended EV, call it a REV or an E-REV. With this design, the engine acts as a generator, recharging the battery. This is what the BYD Shark does. Yongwang and Fengchen Bao, all premium BYD vehicles. I believe this is what's happening here. The PHEV version is still a tri-motor electric vehicle, and the 2-liter turbo is recharging the batteries when it reaches a set percent state of charge. However, early videos online are adding the power of the gas engine to the 858 horsepower of the electric tri-motors. That suggests the engine is driving the wheels, maybe just the front wheels, or the content creator was wrong and nobody from Denza bothered to fact check them. This display in the vehicle shows the electric motors powering the rear wheels. At the front is an engine, but it's not clear how power is being delivered. Either way, it can go 125 miles on electricity alone, according to the CLTC test. That's probably like 85 miles EPA. The gas engine extends the total range to 683 miles on the CLTC, at which point you fill it up with gas and keep going. Plug it in too if you have time. The battery is less than half the size of the full electric model, but it does add an engine, fuel tank, emissions, etc. Final price is a little cheaper and a little slower than the battery electric version. Take your pick. BYD has earned its reputation as the biggest manufacturer of plug-in vehicles. If it has any weakness, autonomy could be it. Let's take a look at what they're up to. They announced that their Fengchen Bao brand will use driver assist technology from the Chinese giant Huawei, their intelligent driving ADS 3.0 system. Huawei already licenses this system to other premium Chinese automakers. It brings automated parking, collision avoidance, hand-free driving on highway. I've seen videos of hands-free driving in urban areas, but it's not clear if that is a test or if it's available for production for anyone to use. In general, I'd say it brings BYD up to par with many other vehicles in China, but not best in class, not yet. Huawei has massive resources in China and a desire to lead in this area of technology, and so does BYD. Earlier this year, they announced their Sanqi smart car system. They said they have allocated 4,000 engineers and $14 billion to develop smart autonomous systems. BYD makes great lithium iron phosphate batteries, their blade design, and they're starting to do some battery swapping. They signed a deal with FAW to provide batteries that will be swap capable. NIO just launched their Onvo sub-brand, and their first EV, the L60, will be battery swappable using BYD batteries. Now, to be fair, it's how the pack is engineered into the vehicle that determines if it can be swapped. But it's worth noting that BYD is not ignoring this trend in China. And if you want my take on battery swapping, you can check out this video. I tend to gloss over BYD's commercial vehicles. At the IAA Transport event in Germany, they showed off some of their electric trucks, an electric yard tractor to move trailers around within the yard, and a last-mile delivery van called the E-Vali. They signed an agreement with logistics company who will put them to use in France. 2 models will be offered. In this space, the models typically refer to the cargo volume they can carry. The smallest E-Vali holds about as much as the largest Ford E-Transit available in Europe. A better comparison is to the Rivian ECV or EDV, like the Amazon van, some of which have been put into use in Europe. Key package delivery specs, volume, payload, and range. The BYD is not better on paper than any of these. What we don't know is the price, which could be much less pending tariff negotiations. To keep this video reasonably short, I excluded several announcements where BYD announced they were entering or adding new variants of the BYD brand. They're finding other markets to keep up their growth. China is just too crowded. BYD celebrated its 9 millionth new energy vehicle produced, but that's nothing. Sales for the remainder of 2024 should be massive. If you want to know just how big, hit that subscribe and like button, and I'll tell you, coming real in the next episode.